the idea was today to change the topic, to finish on that and to talk about the AI infrastructure, Europe readiness and sustainability, because we always talk about technology, we mentioned several times, but we forget that technology has some consequences, technical, sometimes regulatory, sustainability, ESG, and also dependence or sovereignty for Europe. So I'm pleased to welcome Moritz on stage from Trinity. Maybe a few words to introduce yourself and Trinity. And by the way, you are in the exhibition hall, so give us some words.
Yes. So hello, thank you very much for the invitation. So my name is Moritz von Tresckow. I'm a developer for machine learning applications for our TMS system. We are Trinity Management System, are a privately held independent TMS provider situated in Frankfurt. We have a long time of experience, so we are at the market 28 years, so we have quite a substantial product. And of course, machine learning and AI is also an important factor for us, and it's one of my jobs to take care of that. Before I was in Treasury, I actually was a researcher for machine learning models, so I have also quite the experience in developing and training machine learning models and also hosting them in data centers, so I know a little bit what this means and what the implications of these are.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic because we talk about these new technologies, but we forget that the consequences, as I say. And so when we speak about artificial intelligence today, we often think about the models, the applications, and the breakthrough. But behind every model lies an invisible reality. So we need more and more energy, massive energy requirement, a lot of water. It's not known, but we need a lot of water too. Ideally, place where we don't have earthquake or this kind of thing, and enormous computational resources and infrastructure, and that are eventually distributed across the world for geographical reasons, for also cost reason. And Europe is facing a paradox. So we are one of the biggest markets. We have a huge demand, but we have the impression that it's a new, let's say, focus for the von der Leyen II Commission that we should maintain our sovereignty and make sure that we are not too over-dependent on the US. So I guess you agree that we are maybe too much depending on the US, and when we have data centers in Europe, it's belonging to, guess what, US-based companies. So what is your view, and do you think that it's something that we should take care of in Europe, being less dependent from US or Asian technologies and, let's say, infrastructure? What should we do to remain sustainable, to become, let's say, more independent? Are we on the good tracks? And what is your view, or let's say, general overview of that? And you have potentially some slides. I don't know if you have the slides.
No, not today.
Just to give some. Okay, yes, but you can give us some
yes,
KPIs and interesting information about that.
Yes. So regarding the dependencies, so in this whole AI market, there are actually quite substantial dependencies, and basically everyone is dependent on the United States of America, and this is primarily due to three reasons. The first one is they control most of the hyperscalers. So even here in Europe, they control 70% of this market with AWS, Microsoft Azure, and so on. The second reason is, of course, companies like NVIDIA, which basically have a monopoly on chip design. So NVIDIA has a 92% market share in the design of graphical processing units. The rest goes to AMD, which is also an American company. And they essentially control this complete piece of the market. And for those who don't know this, GPUs are the processing units you need to train AI models, most of them. So basically, if you want to train a large language model like ChatGPT, you need a lot of these GPUs, and these GPUs are primarily controlled by US companies. Yes, and the third reason is, of course, that you have the most attractive jobs and business environments for AI in the United States. And this causes a lot of European startups, companies, and also AI talents to book a one-way ticket to Silicon Valley to never to return.
That's maybe one of the first risks we can see, the fact that our talent in Europe could be tempted to move to the US or to Asia. And even in the US, we see that a lot of these technical person profile are also from Asia. So do you see a risk for us? Is it maybe the first step to try to preserve our talent in Europe? But for that, we need to develop some businesses for them.
Definitely. So I think there is definitely a European incentive to keep the companies which are AI oriented, which are promising in Europe, and not let them go over the Atlantic to the United States. And the same goes, of course, for the talents. But this is essentially boils down to a question of business environments. Do you provide these people an attractive environment to prosper and develop? Which is currently a bit difficult here, because here you have a lot of rules and regulations. So in Europe, correct me if I'm wrong, we have the tendency to regulate first and then develop and see what comes.
Over-regulate.
And also to over-regulate, and then you basically incentivize people who are active in this area to leave. So this would definitely be one part you can consider.
But can Europe ensure its data centers and energy grids can handle exponential AI demand without compromising the sustainability goals? Because it's also something that we are maybe a bit too orthodox in Europe, or at least before the recent omnibus. So should we prioritize efficiency, greener AI model rather than only performance and scale?
I think when it comes to sustainability, you have to consider the data centers and not the AI models themselves. So to give some numbers, to train a model like ChatGPT, you need around the yearly energy demand of a medium-sized city. So this is a lot. It's around about, I think, 50 gigawatts or something. And that doesn't even contain the energy it takes to actually run it then for a year, which is also actually quite expensive. And yes, and this training process is so energy intensive, you need the data centers. And yes, and of course here in Europe we have our sustainability goals. We want to be green, we want to be carbon free. But that is actually quite difficult if you on the one hand have this increasing demand for AI models, which have to be trained, which have to be tested. But also you want to keep your energy mix relatively carbon free. And for this, data centers are actually quite difficult examples, because they tend to use more carbon intensive energies. And the prime reason for this is because they need power 24/7, 365 days a year, relatively constant. And if you try to do this with purely renewables, you're going to have some challenges. But that to be said, it's not impossible. It comes to mind, one of the Google data centers, Hamina in Finland, is actually running on 98% carbon-free energy, is cooling with seawaters, and actually has a heat reuse plan in which it actually can heat some houses in Finland. So much to the extent that they actually shut down a coal power plant, which was doing the heating. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement there, and there's a lot of potentials there. But of course, these are sustainability and the rising energy demands are two goals on an opposite spectrum.
You know, it's quite important. And so, do you think that we in Europe should focus on this sovereign cloud data infrastructure or specialized AI accelerators, cheap GPUs? Because we have a few tech companies. ASML is a good example, but still we are a bit behind Asia and mainly US.
I think it's elementary to decrease dependencies on both of these parts, because with the data center, it's basically the two monopolies that the United States has, the hyperscalers and of course the graphical processing units. So in an ideal world, Europe would come up with an own company which is able to design graphical processing units. But what's interesting, what also not many people know, is there exist companies like ASML, and what ASML does is essentially build the machinery that companies like TSMC need in order to build the GPUs from NVIDIA. Like if ASML would disappear from the world like this, NVIDIA could continue to produce GPUs until the first machine from TSMC starts breaking. So,
and by the way, we saw recently with Experian that a Dutch company, but held by Chinese, could also create some trouble in the car industry.
Well, it's a lot of leverage if you can push a button and deactivate the whole industry of a company. So.
Yeah, and do you think that what are the biggest hidden costs of scaling AI in Europe? Is it energy, although we have some solution to reduce the energy cost, infrastructure, talent shortage? Because we have also some specialists. I'm thinking about French company like Legrand, Schneider. So we have you mentioned Mistral. So we are not nowhere, but not as far we should.
No, I think we actually are quite well situated with AI talent. I mean, we're not top of the top, but we're at least swimming in the behind them. And also, if you consider open source models, like the best open source model at the moment is maybe half a year, 1 year behind ChatGPT. So I don't think it's an issue with the know-how. I think it's more an issue with the energy.
Yeah. And when you think about it, if you look at the past, so a good example was the airplane industry, where we were able to build a big player, the first one in the world. So we missed an opportunity to merge a two train provider, Alstom and Siemens. But don't you think that we should consider like airplanes or defense, that this, let's say, technology in a broad sense should be also a priority for the Commission?
Definitely. So it definitely makes sense to pool the competences of different countries in this regard. And this is also happening to some extent with the AI Invest Act and the European Commission to decide to build the AI gigafactories here in Europe, and they are distributed all around Europe. So it's not only one company, one country, but a number of different countries, and they're all interlaced. So you can pool computational resources from one if you need them with the ones in the other. So if you train your model, it could one half could train in Greece and the other one in Finland. So I think these coordinative efforts are necessary in order to stay competitive when you compete with United States and China.
And do you see a risk, because we try to regulate or to over-regulate, where in the US they try to deregulate, so where it gives them a competitive advantage? So do you see that as a major hurdle?
Yes. Actually, yes. I think it would be make much more sense to develop first and then take back the reins once you see that things get out of hand, other than go the other way around, because then nothing gets developed or just very slowly. So they have an advantage there.
And when it comes to data security, it's also becoming more and more an important issue. We talk about that, especially in Treasury, with the key financial information or pieces of information. So are we protecting them enough? So what is your view about the data protection?
I think the data protection is actually quite important, especially when it comes to services like ChatGPT, because usually clients are very strict and hard when it comes to the data security of a TMS provider. But then they plug in some company secrets into ChatGPT because the report needs to be out by the end of the day. So I think it's definitely makes sense to educate people that when they interact with artificial intelligence, and specifically with large language models, that the data is going somewhere, and someone is processing this, and you should keep it in mind. So especially when it comes to treasury data, which is in some respect the heartbeat of a company, it's very important. You don't really want to let this get out of your data governance.
But do you agree that we are at risk because changing the way we educate our youth, we educate our, let's say, professional, we change and we try to develop a giant in Europe will take a while. So do you think that the risk is not being always behind the US and behind Asia? Is it possible to expect one day to catch up?
I think
you are more pessimistic.
No, I'm actually optimistic. It really depends on what kind of environment gets created in Europe, because I think we have very smart people here, which are also very innovative. And I think if you let these people prosper and do their work, I mean, we have companies like ASML, Zeiss, Mistral. It's not impossible, and I think if you just enable these companies, I think we will catch up.
And a lot of providers of parts that could be useful for these data centers. It's not only US companies, but I mentioned some other European companies. So no, very interesting comments. So let's try to remain optimistic. And so again, if you have any question, do not hesitate to talk to Moritz, because he's really well, let's say, informed and has a lot of very insightful information about the situation, the current situation. But let's remain optimistic. And by the way, the fact that the US universities are not really favorable at the moment for European and they are pushed back to their countries could be an opportunity to recruit talent in Europe and to develop our own, let's say, infrastructure. Thanks a lot for that. That was interesting to have a different angle approach and to talk about the consequences of the technology before talking about only technologies. So thanks a lot, Moritz.
Thank you as well.